Humans don't just kill. We choreograph that, we compose it like a symphony, pain in crescendo, blood as percussion, across centuries, across continents. We've elevated execution into art, not because we had to, but because we could. We made the death loud, public, meaningful, beautiful, even in the most grotesque way. And the worst part, we applauded, because nothing says civilization like inventing 50 ways to make a human stop breathing slowly. Execution isn't just death. It's not the end of the play, it is the play. Humans didn't settle for a clean kill. No, they turned punishment into performance. Imagine this, you're tied up. A crowd surrounds you cheering, not because you're a hero, but because you're the entertainment. In this world, pain isn't a side effect, it's the main attraction. And the audience, they're not innocent, they clap. For thousands of years, humanity asked itself one dark question: how can we kill but make it interesting? Quick death, boring. We needed rituals, ceremonies, a bit of flair. So we created methods that stretched pain into hours, days, even weeks. Tools were crafted, stages were built, and torment became tradition. Because what's the point of justice if it's not theatrical? Many executions were public, not for law, but for show. People gathered like it was a festival. Families brought snacks. The goal, not just to punish but to educate. And by educate we mean traumatize the kids early. A child watches someone being burnt alive and smiles. That's not innocence, that's training. The lesson, pain teaches, but sometimes it teaches the wrong thing. In this video we won't just list execution methods, we'll tour the human mind at its worst. You'll see state approved deaths and folk horror passed down like bedtime stories. You'll meet machines of death, but also philosophies that justify them. Every scene is a glimpse into what humans are capable of when they're angry and creative. Yes, boiling alive, not in water, sometimes oil, milk, even lead, because why stop at simple? They'd lower the person slowly so the screams came in stages. First the skin peels, then the flesh bubbles. Organs fail like a horror movie orchestra. And around the pot, people watched, sometimes clapped, sometimes took notes. Because this wasn't just punishment, it was entertainment. Crucifixion, that slow deaths on display. You're nailed, not just tied to a wooden beam, left under the sun like a failed art project. Breathing becomes a fight, every muscle collapses. It can take days, and all that time, you're a billboard, a message, a warning. Rome didn't invent it, but they turned it into a franchise. Japan had its own brand of execution, seppuku. Not done to you, done by you. You take a blade, slice your own abdomen open, not for shock, for honor. You bleed slowly, deliberately. Sometimes a second would behead you to help, because in that culture, death wasn't an escape, it was a statement. You think the scariest part is the dirt? It's not, it's the silence. They bury you alive and leave. No one hears you scream. Every breath you take steals a little more air until you realize you're not dying fast, you're dying slowly. And nobody's coming. The electric chair, marketed as humane, efficient, civilized. Reality, more like fire and smoke. The first jolt doesn't always work. The body convulses, eyes roll, flesh burns, and sometimes, just sometimes, they have to reset the machine, because nothing says modern justice like multiple attempts at vaporizing a brain. The guillotine was designed for mercy. One clean cut, but machines fail. The blade sticks or doesn't go all the way through. Suddenly your merciful execution turns into a panic. And the executioner, he grabs an axe, because when science fails, Tradition steps in. Execution by cold. It happened you're stripped, abandoned in ice and left to freeze. It starts slow, forced your fingers, then your thoughts. The cold eats away your warmth and your hope. You don't just die, you watch yourself die from the outside in, a silent death, but never quiet on the inside. To bleed someone out sounds passive. It's not. They cut just enough to keep you aware. The blood leaves slowly, like time itself. You don't scream, you drift, until the world feels like a whisper and you're nothing but an empty vessel abandoned by your own body. The question isn't how did people kill each other? The real question is why did they make a show of it? Why turn death into theater? Why build scaffolds, design costumes, rehearse the pain? Because execution was never just about ending a life. It was about proving a point, and that point, power. You'd think the pain of being stoned to death comes from the first rock, right? Wrong. The first hit, it just reminds you you're still alive. The second gives you hope, maybe it'll be quick. But the ones after, they don't just break your bones, they break your dignity. Stoning wasn't just punishment, it was a public event. Everyone had to join in. Every rock came from a hand, and sometimes that hand carried decades of hatred. Death by stoning, it wasn't justice. It was a crowd therapy session gone rabid. In the glorious days of medieval creativity, they came up with something called sewing execution. You'd be tied upside down, feet up, head down, so gravity keeps the blood flowing and you awake. Then the saw begins between your legs and moves up slowly, not because it was efficient, no, because they wanted you conscious for every inch of horror. Anatomy? Oh, they studied it alright, not to save lives, but to extend death. Surgical precision with medieval flair. Think firing squads were simple. Some regimes had this clever trick. Every soldier fires, but only one bullet is real. Why? So each shooter could sleep at night, telling himself, maybe mine was the blank. Even death got dressed in a group lie. This wasn't just execution. It was theater, loud, smoky, and layered with fear. When the trigger's pulled and everyone's not guilty, who's really responsible? All of them and none. Water as a weapon? Yup. Not drowning, just dripping, a single drop on your forehead. Again and again and again. They said the mind unravels before the skin ever does. No blood, no cuts, just the relentless tick, 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 until silence becomes a scream, and that scream, it's yours. Torture doesn't always need blades. Sometimes it just needs time, water, and a dark room. Execution by animals? Oh yes, they tie you to a post and release a bear, or a tiger, or get this, a hungry wild boar. This wasn't about justice, it was a live show. You were the star and the snack. Your body became a chew toy. It wasn't law, it was a circus, and the crowd, they weren't silent, they cheered, because sometimes people crave blood more than bread. Buried alive with preservatives. That's right, live embalming. They'd put you in a coffin, pour in some embalming fluids, not to preserve your corpse, but to prolong your pain. You smell the chemicals, feel them heat up inside your veins, and realize this isn't coming fast. This was execution on pause. Preservation not for history, but for agony. You don't die quickly, you dissolve consciously. The weirdest of them all, the scaphism Mercedes, straight from ancient Persia. They'd sandwich you between two boats, smear you with milk and honey, then leave you floating in a stagnant pond. Here's what happens next. Bugs, worm as parasites. You don't die from the pain, you die from rot, slow, smelly, alive far too long. This wasn't punishment, it was a feast, and you were the buffet, and yes, they watched, and yes, they laughed. We've seen how people die, but the real horror is the mind that invented it and then slept peacefully. If that intrigued you, you're one of us. You crave the truths we're not supposed to talk about. Subscribe, because what's coming next, even we aren't ready for it. Factually Disturbed, where we show humanity from the angle no one wants to see.